Welcome to OOO, an out of ordinary podcast where we dig deep into case studies and the nitty gritty of Web3 marketing. You'll find here all the amazing people that are building Web3, so stick to us as we address their marketing secrets and learn how to build amazing products and brands. Hello everyone, I'm Alex, your fellow Web3 marketer and the host on Out of Ordinary podcast. This is episode 50 and I'm super excited for the next month. My goal, to make this podcast your go-to place when it comes to answering anything Web3 marketing related. As always, I want to let you know that you can now support the show both on Patreon and Unisub with donations in fiat or crypto. You can donate as little as $5 a month and still have a huge impact. And you know what? If you can't donate, that's totally fine. Send this podcast episode to a friend, leave a 5-star review, or post about it on social media. Every action matters. Now, let me introduce you to my guest. Jye is the head of Entreprise at POAP Inc., evolving solutions and working with organizations on their community and marketing strategies using POAP to create greater connections and experiences. He's a member of various communities in Web3 from Safary, Serotonin and Purple DAO, who fund the continuous expansion of Farcaster Protocol. Before moving into the Web3 space, he had 8+ years of experience in e-commerce, specifically last-mile delivery platforms from an early employee to IPO at Deliveroo, thought to consulting roles at Publicis Media and PepsiCo. He played pivotal roles in building products and services to generate new revenue streams at these organizations. As POAP recently reached 7 million minted POAPs, thought it would be a great idea to get Jye on the podcast and share all about it. Hi, Jye. How are you?
I'm good. How are you today?
I'm great. It's 8th of March, so I'm still looking for a bit for the sun, but I'm so excited to be able to be recording this with you finally. I know we met in person at NFT Paris, and that was a lovely experience. And now it's great to have you in front of the mic, let's say, and to share a bit more about like yourself, your journey, and like what POAP is doing. And to kind of kick it off, like, do you want to introduce yourself and tell us a bit about how you got into Web3?
Yeah, absolutely. It's great to be here and chatting with you. So from a Web3 perspective, my story kind of starts a long time back. My first job out of uni was working in banking, and I actually had a mentor at the time who was the chief innovation officer. And he was speaking about, this incredible technology called blockchain, how it's going to change the way we do payments at the bank. So I started to read up on it at that time, and from that point onwards was kind of intrigued. I've always been fascinated with innovation. However, it never really sank. It wasn't something that inspired me so much that I moved into it. Something I maybe wish I did do at the time. But yeah, fast forward to maybe a few years ago during maybe the crypto summer of 21, and started to research into the space a little bit more with some of the media and the hype that was being created. And I was really intrigued about the longer term view of how this could disrupt, big tech, some of the ways marketplaces dominate the user experience as a consumer today. And have spent probably the last 12 months figuring out what I wanted to do in the space and where. And that's led me to start at POAP, which I'm really excited about.
I know you've struggled a bit with your journey to get into Web3, and I know a question about that is going to come a bit later on as well. And I know many people were in the same situation, so I think it would be very, very cool to maybe talk a bit about that as well. Just to kind of kick off the discussion, can you maybe give us an overview of POAP, its role in Web3, and how did it evolve from its inception?
Yeah, sure. So there was a few people in Argentina back in 2018 who come up with this idea of using tokens as a proof of attendance. And then they officially kind of built it and launched it at ETH Denver in 2019. So with ETH Denver just finishing a few days ago, actually, we've just kind of hit the 5 years old mark. So POAP is proof of attendance protocol in its longer form. And it's an ecosystem we've built to capture and preserve records of important things that have happened and try and represent them in their fullest expression on chain. So what we're looking at is trying to be this place where when we look back at some point in the future, it's possible to kind of pick out these moments that led to the rise of great companies, maybe movements that are, subcultures, could be an invention that's been developed. And so, I think that's where we're at the starting point.
What's the difference between collecting an NFT and collecting a POAP?
Sure. So POAPs have all the traits of an NFT, the authenticity, the transparency of the provenance and like the permanence that it's always going to exist as a record on the blockchain. But the difference is that the technology that we're using is built to preserve precious things. And that means we can't also be the technology that's used to create digital freebies. So, when you see the classic degen, which I sometimes do myself and mints lots of different NFTs, sometimes, they can just fall into a pit or a blockchain ecosystem without a great deal of meaning. And so we're trying to create this much richer ecosystem of tokens that have a special meaning to users, communities, and brands.
I was actually talking about POAPs and digital identities with Evan from Disco XYZ. She's like, oh my God, POAP they're like my good friends. And we were like, oh, right now it's actually very cool because you can show your POAP to somebody. And actually it's a very good way to start a conversation instead of just asking like, hey, how are you? Where are you from? What do you do?
Yes.
So I think it's a nicer way to kind of kick it off in Web3. Something I want to ask you, and I know a lot of the audience, a lot of like my followers, a lot of your followers have asked about that as well. And everybody was really big on like case studies that POAP where POAP has been included. And can you maybe give us some examples of like how these Web3 companies are using it? And yeah, what are some case studies that you can maybe share with us today?
Yeah, sure. So there's kind of two key components to using POAP. The first is making a moment collectible and putting that on chain. So this is giving like a chance to have a memento from a significant experience in life, and making sure that, at some point in the future, we can look back at that meaningful point in history. And then the second part is creating some utility for being part of those moments. And so that's where we've seen a lot of use cases at events. What can people do with the POAP after they've collected it? How are POAPs bringing people together to socially connect, which is something you just mentioned before. So we've built some solutions, and we'll touch on those a little bit later, but how we're trying to make sure that people can bring together those shared experiences they had, and make those fun, make them more memorable, and engaging. So a few examples of this in the Web3 space. We've had chains from Scroll, a layer 2 in Ethereum, use POAP quite commonly. Yuga Labs has been using POAPs. They use this throughout their community, from event activations all the way through to who has participated in community surveys. And then we have another nice example of Chainlink, which is obviously in the business of oracles, and they have used POAP for like education, proof of completing education, and to celebrate that. So a nice example there could be like attending or completing a hackathon or completing a education course on blockchain technology. So there's been quite a broad set of use cases within the Web3 space. But I guess maybe the best one to pull out is we have been prominently seen and used at events in real life and a lot of these industry events. So ETH Denver, been last week, is a really interesting example of that, where all attendees, when they scan through on token proof to enter the venue, they got a POAP to verify that they were there. And then we looked at how we could create some utility behind that by the POAP unlocking a trivia game, which was kind of encouraging attendees to explore and engage with all the different parts of the event, speak to different sponsors, and they could win prizes for doing so.
Did you claim your NFT Paris POAP?
I did claim my NFT POAP. I have become quite a digital badge collector over the last couple of months since starting. So it's quite funny seeing my monthly rise in POAPs collected. I think I've gone from like 2 to 4 to 6, and then last week with all the fun activity in Paris, it was like 40 or 50. So yeah, I'm wanting to collect any one that I can possibly collect. But yeah, as I mentioned before, that's a lot about me getting more engaged and attending different events, which I'm trying to do a lot more of.
Are you guys planning to do any competition with like the numbers of POAPs that like anybody is collecting?
It would be pretty cool. I think the top POAP collector has something like 13 or 1400 POAPs, which is amazing. So yeah, I mean, it's definitely something that is worth keeping in mind. We have some super passionate people who are so proud about the POAPs they've collected and the number they've collected. And getting a chance to meet a few of those people in Paris was a really nice feeling.
Can you maybe give us some like Web2 examples as well? Because I know not only Web3 companies are using POAP, and I think it will be very, very cool. You already shared some of that examples with me, but I want you to do that with the audience as well. And who is that and how do they do it?
Yeah. So there's a lot of brands across different industries that are looking at doing projects or investing a lot more in blockchain technology. I'd say we've seen like the strongest uses with consumer facing brands, and the common use case has been using POAPs as a way to be a part of a brand interactive experience and giving people who engage in that experience a memento. So the best example we have of that is American Express. They have member collectibles that sits in their app in the US, and when people go to Amex lounges or some of their event activations, which they do really great activations at a lot of big events, from the US Open to Austin City Limits Music Festival, members who collect those POAPs unlock future benefits, which could be like access to tickets in the future to similar events, or discounts from partners. So Amex is using the POAPs as a way to create a better experience at the event, and then create better personalized offers post-event, which is quite good. Another one that I can share is Porsche. So a bit more on the higher end. They have like a exclusive community. I think there's only about 100 or 200 people in this community that are all 911 car model owners of Porsche. And they have about 6 or 7 events a year where people travel around the world and connect about their love for Porsche and this car model. So at each of these events, they can collect a POAP for attending. They also get like a physical sticker that they can put on their cars. And this is really like playing into, the community's like desire to have status in the community and really show that they're an active member. And so POAP has kind of contributed to that.
Something that I think like I'm very curious about, so I'm just gonna ask, but I think like others would like to know as well, is like, do you think these people, like, of course, we have people in Web3, they know about POAP and they're like really willing to collect it and so on, and put their wallet and to keep it there. But like, what about Web2? Like, people, like, how open are they to do such, or like to get involved in such activities or the activations?
Yeah, so I think this is why we've worked with so many brands on projects that they know the audience attending is not a Web3 crowd, so to speak. And it's because we've created like a great user experience that has like minimal friction. It's scanning a QR code, which is very familiar to most people today, or tapping on a near field communication device, NFC, and then you kind of enter one set of information and you can collect that memento. So I think we've done a really good job in like creating a minimal friction experience that has not a great deal of any of the technical Web3 lingo involved in it. And that's really, resonated with brands when they're wanting to, either test or more prominently develop activations using blockchain.
Another example you gave me was in esports using POAP, right? Was it like an NBA team or a football team? I can't remember exactly, but I thought that was a very cool example, and I wanted to ask if you can share that as well.
Yeah, which brand was that? Sorry?
I can't remember if it was like an NBA team. It was something esports.
Yeah, sure. So we've done a number of activations with Coinbase. And so Coinbase used POAP for the same examples we've mentioned, a part of a brand activation where they were sponsoring major events. So yeah, this has been something like the NBA, the WNBA, various like sporting events in the US. And we created an experience for them where people could collect the POAP, and then also share some communication about like downloading the Coinbase wallet, which was focused more on like a wallet acquisition or new customer acquisition campaign. So yeah, this is like another use case, which isn't necessarily about like engaging with an existing community, but also about like using POAP to engage with people on the peripherals who, are considering using your product or you're wanting to connect with and perhaps make them a customer in the future.
How do you guys leverage user-generated content and word-of-mouth marketing to expand your reach and influence within the Web3 community?
Yeah, so because POAPs are normally collected as a part of like some experience that you've been a part of, and it's like a special memory, we find people are generally pretty proud to like show off the POAPs they've collected, and so this like certainly helps with creating a lot of content that exists online around POAPs. So from our perspective, we just really try and accentuate that more. And a component of that is how can we make the experience of collecting POAPs more immersive, more interesting, more fun. So not just always, scanning a QR code and collecting a POAP and that's it. But we're looking at some new solutions that we've been rolling out over the past, I'd say, 4 or 5 months. Most recently, the POAP Station, which is now this is kind of like a new word for me, but I'm going to share it. It's called a gachapon, which is like a Japanese term for like a vending machine that dispenses toys that are in capsules. I'm sure, have you seen those before in your time? They're often around in like shopping malls and things like that.
Yeah, I think I've seen that, and I think I've seen that in like, I don't know, it's not a circus, but it's something like outside where there's like a flywheel and stuff like this. They always have that, right?
Yeah. Like you put a coin in and then you spin the little thing around, and a capsule comes out with some type of prize or reward in there. So look, if I'm not going to teach you anything today, you can at least get gachapon is a new word to your vocabulary. So this is like a really nice one we used at DevConnect in Istanbul, and we've done a few more of these as a part of a collector experience. But yeah, just coming back to your question, these are the types of things we're trying to do. So when the experience is fun, you're scanning a QR code, you get a physical coin, you put it in this little toy dispenser. That is like user-generated content right there. People think that's incredible. So a lot of these things we're trying to do to like touch on people's nostalgia and delight them a little bit more as like core elements that we're always trying to do to please people in the collection process of POAP.
All right, let's take a quick break and introduce you to a game changer in the lead generation arena, Dealfront. Now, we all know the struggle of identifying those elusive website visitors and turning them into valuable leads. But what if I told you there's a tool that not only promises but delivers on supercharging your lead generation and sales efforts. Imagine having the power to identify companies visiting your website, track their behavior in real time, and seamlessly integrate it all with your CRM. Dealfront is not just a tool, it's your secret weapon for efficient and targeted lead engagement. So, what sets it apart? Its revenue engine is fueled by live European data in multiple languages, providing you with insights and access that other tools simply can't match. No more struggling to find the right decision makers. With Dealfront, it's as easy as a few clicks. Here's the magic. With Dealfront, you can harness 3 layers of data: market signals, web visitors, and EU company databases. And there's no need to worry about compliance. Dealfront meets Europe's strict standards, ensuring GDPR compliance competitors simply can't match. Ready to revolutionize your approach to leads and deals? Grab your free demo today at dealfront.com. That's DEALFRONT.com. Don't miss out on the future of successful deal making with Dealfront. Something else I wanted to ask you was regarding partnerships and collaborations that has helped POAP amplify its marketing efforts and its brand. And I wanted to ask if you can maybe give us some examples, like how you guys have done that, because I think in your case, it's not such a Web3 native project. I know it's a protocol, but at the same time, I think it works a bit differently, and it's a bit more, it's appealing to like different types of audiences, let's say, compared to like something that's very, very Web3 native. So I think when it comes to like community building and marketing efforts, that this is one of the questions that I have for you.
Yeah, sure. So from a partnerships perspective, we've done over around 100 key integrations so far. And all of these integrations is trying to expand the use of the product, of course. So that comes from like the creation of POAP through to the distribution and the discovery of the POAP. So a few examples of these, I've got 3 to kind of mention. The most recent one is with Privy. So we've partnered with them to make the user experience even more seamless. So this is where in the past we had an option for people who didn't have an existing Ethereum wallet to still collect POAPs just with their email. What we've now done is create like a simple process in like 3 steps or clicks where users can reserve a POAP with their email, and then they can click through to create an account, which is like a nickname. And then they complete that process, and all of their POAPs are now actually connected to an Ethereum wallet and an ENS domain name that could be something like alex.poap. So this is like a really nice integration that we've done with Privy. A couple of other ones we've done is with Token Proof. So I mentioned before about ETH Denver. In some use cases, we want to ensure that people can collect a POAP, but without adding too much friction to the existing experience already. So ticketing is a great example where we know people are at an event if they're getting their ticket scanned, and so we feel it's a good situation where we can automate the process and automatically airdrop people a POAP when their ticket's scanned. So that's a nice one we've done with Token Proof. And then the last one to mention is with IYK. So, expanding the use and the distribution of POAP by connecting it to physical goods. So that could be having an NFC chip that you've got a "You've Met Me" POAP in your skateboard or in your T-shirt. And it's a really nice way to socially connect with people and kind of build your own social graph that you can see all the people you've met.
How do you guys utilize marketing strategies to promote the platform and engage with your target audience? Because I think for the first time ever, we can finally say POAP is targeting everybody in Web3.
Yeah, thanks. I guess there's been such a broad use case, and we are trying to preserve all of this rich history, really, starting with the Web3 industry. There is, quite a lot of use cases because we want to preserve all of those special moments. So there's kind of 2 elements from the marketing perspective. The one's like, what are we trying to communicate? And one of the focuses at the moment is really shifting that perception of just being a collectible, and that there's much more to collecting a POAP than that. So things that like looking at how you can continuously engage with your community as a brand or an organization during and after the activations where people have collected a POAP. And we're building solutions like moments where you can create like a token gated social experience. So great, I've collected this POAP and it proves that I was at an event. Now, along with all the other people who've collected that POAP, I'm going to share some of those memories via pictures or some like some video files that I have from the event, which is a really nice touch. And then we're also looking at things like token gated commerce as well, where there's a way quite easily for users to be rewarded from collecting a POAP in the future, and that could be like discounts or access to exclusive content. So yeah, that's kind of one thing. We're looking at just like really moving the messaging to ensure that that's understood in the market, that there's a lot more utility behind POAP. And then the second piece is that we're investing and putting a lot more focus on product marketing. So we've been very busy, and since I've started a couple of months ago, it feels like every week we're releasing quite a cool new feature or solution. And so we really want to make sure that that's like being pushed out to our existing POAP community and more broadly. So that's something that we're got quite a big focus on at the moment, is how we go to market, what product marketing are we doing, so people are aware of all these different use cases. Because again, if I think about the flywheel and how we're trying to preserve history, if there's no interesting component to a user in collecting a POAP, then we can't really start that flywheel. If the demand's not there, then the supply of POAPs won't be created. So we're always looking at how we can market new features of our product to make it more fun and exciting to collect.
I feel like every time you mention something about the product, I want to jump straight into the product questions, but I'm going to hold a bit for that. We've mentioned a couple of examples about like what you're doing and about like what some of your partners are doing, as well as like some and what companies that are using POAP, how they're activating their communities. And my next question is regarding like what are some best practices you can share for either individuals, maybe like me, maybe like community owners or businesses that are looking to integrate POAP into their community growth and community in general?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's three tips that I can share if you're looking to create a POAP, and this works for anyone from a personal use all the way up to like big brands and organizations. So the first one is the design matters. It's important to make sure that there's some effort and put into the artwork. Consider the description that you're writing for the POAP, and think about that from like a moment in history, looking forwards 20 years into the future. How do you want the description of collecting this POAP to be read? The more special it is, the more likely collectors are going to feel proud for being given your POAP. So I guess that's the first one around design. The second one is integrity is also really important. The POAP ecosystem is only as good as the integrity of how it's distributed and who's collected it, so we can rely on it as a trustful source. So that means choosing a distribution method that makes it easy for everyone who deserves a POAP to actually mint one. So we have a few different distribution methods, from live Twitter spaces where you can share a secret word, through to a kind of like website landing page with a QR code, or at events where you can use the NFC to tap and collect. So choosing a distribution method that's going to work best is also really important. And then the third one is making sure it's not something you do as a nice to have and then it sits there. It's important that you create awareness and what the future utility or the actual utility at that moment might be from collecting. So the more issuers can kind of market the drop and create that visibility, the more they can tell collectors what it means, why it's important, what will happen after you've collected. Maybe there's some rewards or incentives or a certain status you might have in the community, the more you share that, the more you're going to get out of creating POAPs.
I think these are like very good examples of like what anybody could be doing.
Yeah.
Something else I know I want to talk about is that I know you've worked all your career with marketplaces, and from what you've told me, you've seen time and time again how how much money can be done through data capturing. How important do you believe it is for people to own their data, and what role do you think POAP plays within this discussion?
Yeah, this is a really good question. So POAP was developed to like easily connect organizers with guests, as well as like connecting communities with each other. And so the current state of the platform today means that privacy isn't like the strongest feature. But what we do really well is we help people socially connect and using their own data enable them to do that. So I mentioned before the like social graph where you can see all these people you've connected and what similar on-chain identity you have to those users. That's fantastic. From a privacy perspective, I think as like zero knowledge proofs evolve, this is something that we'll expect to change and will give users more control on how they use their data, including their POAPs, and what they share and what they don't. In this kind of open source nature. So it's really important that we look at that as a way to not compromise the core value proposition with POAP. That it's an enabler to integrate and engage and like create personalized experiences, but ultimately users do have the ownership of the POAP and can decide that, especially as the ZK kind of technology evolves. So yeah, I guess that's kind of the main thought I have around that.
And my next question is kind of connected to the previous one. Can people swap their POAPs? From what I know, yes. And if yes, why and how?
Yes. So, sorry, was your question just regarding the ability to swap the POAPs?
Yes.
Yeah. Apologies, I didn't quite hear that, but yes. So, absolutely. People can buy, sell, and swap their tokens because they are items they truly own, as we just kind of discussed before. So it's valid that someone can have a memento which they want to preserve in history that is actually perhaps more valuable to someone that isn't the primary owner of that memory. And so, there's like some examples of that. We don't encourage the buying and selling of POAPs. However, we recognize there's like some valid use cases. So for an example, I would love to go back and collect an Art Blocks POAP that was distributed in 2021 that was given to people as like the first anniversary of Art Blocks for people who had one of their pieces at that time. So this is like an example where perhaps owning that first anniversary POAP could mean something more to me. I feel a stronger affinity to the Art Blocks brand than someone who collected it at the time. And so we're aware that, these kind of use cases exist out there. But what's worth noting ultimately is that with anything on blockchain, you can obviously see the backlog of the transaction, who originally minted it and where it's been passed on from that point of view. So it's always possible to distinguish the like primary and secondary owners of a POAP.
Now it does make more sense that you're saying this, because I was like, oh my god, but like this is all about your data and all about like the stuff that you've done. Like, why would you ever sell that? But now that you're explaining it, it does make sense. I think we're finally at a place where we can talk about product, which was one of my most burning questions, let's say. And I do have a couple of questions here. One is regarding user experience. You mentioned that before, that for you was very important to build a product that's frictionless and it's easy to use by absolutely everybody. Doesn't matter if they're more techie or less less tech savvy, let's say. What do you think about the UX UI in Web3, and how important do you think this is for mass adoption?
Yeah, so this is a commonly talked about topic with a lot of technical infrastructure being the focus over the last few years. We're always thinking about what's next and how we drive mass adoption with UX. So I think like just bringing it back with any product, there always has to be a strong proposition behind it. So that's, I think, the most important thing to get adoption of a product. So what are the problems and needs, or what's the value add to someone's life? And if you can clearly communicate that and in the user experience, I think you've done well. The other side of like a high quality user experience that is often missed is that it needs to be something that's easy to do, that you want to do. So like reducing the friction is something that is really important, and making sure that the user experience is as seamless as possible. And so from a POAP perspective, we've tried to design something that's just really dead simple to use. And the reason why is because we've understood and anticipated that the fact that we want to preserve history and the desire we have to do that on chain might not be there for other people. So if we don't create something that's really easy to use, we'll never get that flywheel started and getting people to put these amazing memories on chain. So until we get them using our product by making it easy, we can't get them to really understand the value of preserving the history and all the things we've discussed today about like what that can mean in the future. So I guess that's kind of my take on the UX piece and where POAP fits into that.
Something I did not prepare, but there's a question that came to my mind right now, because I feel like most Web3 products or services they're for everyone, but they're mostly targeting men. And I would guess when it comes to POAP, the adoption rate is a bit different. Do you have any stats when it comes to that?
The adoption rate of POAP in reference to
Gender.
No, gender's not a thing we know or capture in any part of the use of POAP. So it's a really good question, and one I would also love to know myself.
Me too. Especially because today is International Women's Day. I ran a space last night with several amazing women in the Web3 space, talking about their experiences and the kind of products that are out there and so on. So I feel like it's still a discussion that needs to be tackled in many shapes and forms. So and I'm pretty passionate about it. So if it's not obvious already.
Absolutely. No, I mean, look, I think just on that point, it's great to see a lot of initiatives that I have seen personally in the US, in London, in Berlin, a few places I know quite well, where they're really trying to encourage females to get into Web3, whether it's technically becoming an entrepreneur and founding, or other roles like we're in the marketing and growth space. So I'm all for bringing everyone together in the community to grow this pie.
For sure. I mean, like if we're talking about mass adoption, probably this is something that we should all be paying attention to.
Yes.
But kind of moving forward from this, I do have a couple of more questions in regards to product. Something that somebody from the audience asked, they said, and I'm going to quote just to make sure that I'm not missing anything from their question. They said, it'd be great to learn about use cases and companies using POAP on a continuous basis and not in a form or a one-time thing. Do you have any examples for that?
So there has been quite a number of those. I touched on a couple of those earlier. So American Express and Porsche, where POAP's actually integrated into their own platform. So this is like much more of a systematic use versus like a once-off example. And there's quite a few of those. I guess we have like kind of three levels of uses. These single brand activation moments, all the way through to the like integrations into a platform. And one thing we haven't touched on, but I know you've seen yourself, is our passport, which we had at the World of Women gala in Paris a couple of weeks ago. Which, obviously brings together multiple elements and collecting different POAPs in a gamified way. So, there's a lot of communities who love the use of POAP and have continued to use it for a whole range of, I guess, engage to earn or memento moments, particularly, in the Web3 community, where they'll be used for Ask Me Anything sessions with the founding team. They'll be used at event activations. They'll be used at community meetups. They'll be used for proof of like loyalty or for completing some kind of project within the community. So there's a lot of use cases where it's not just like a brand uses it once and then that's kind of it. And that's obviously our aim too.
Something somebody asked was about dynamic POAPs. What can you tell us about this?
Yeah, so dynamic POAPs, from this perspective, I guess the best thing I can share is POAP moments and how we have created a way to put information on chain that sits underneath the POAP you've collected. So this is the social element we spoke about earlier, where a group of people who have all collected a POAP, perhaps they had a community dinner as a part of this NFT community that they're in, and now they want to share the experience with those people in a token gated way. So we can then upload, or a user can upload information, text files, audio files, video files, etc. And these would sit actually under the POAP for people to see. So this is, some of the ways where, the POAP can become more enriched and dynamic in terms of the memories that it holds.
You guys have minted around the time that NFT Paris finished. So hopefully I'm gonna say this correctly, but please correct me if I'm wrong. Around 7 million POAPs. What are some activations you've done, and what have you learned from this experience? Especially because you were telling me at the beginning of the conversation that it was very different to be there from a sponsor standpoint and from a company that does activations.
Yeah. So originally, POAP was created just for proof of attendance in person. Then things happened like COVID, where we couldn't meet in person anymore. So we expanded to virtual uses. And ever since then, the uses have kind of evolved. And some of the things we've learned from that is that the visibility of the activation and the ease of the experience to collect, it's just super important, particularly in crowded environments. There's a lot of POAP use at these industry events in Web3 where there's like sensory overload. There's music, there's like flashing lights, there's speakers and robots and all kinds of things where people are trying to grab your attention. And so what we've really made sure is that the learnings we have is POAPs will be successful when you can create like strong visibility and ease of use. So I guess that's like, probably the biggest core learning that we've had to date.
What are some ways enterprise leaders use POAP to engage their people, let's say, or their teams after the experience is over? Because I think during the experience it's quite easy to get people to make them collect something and so on, and to make this experience enjoyable. But what happens after the event is over?
What happens after the event is over? So this is one of the focuses we have from a communications and marketing point of view, is creating some more education and encouraging that issuers, as we call them, who are creating POAPs, that they really understand to make this a successful part of their event and to capture these moments on chain for their brand or community, that there has to be some utility they create. That is, an element that helps engage users in collecting POAPs. So we have supported that with some new solutions we're building. The passport is one of them, which we spoke about, and an example of that is where it's like becomes a game, a scavenger hunt, or it becomes a engage to earn program where collecting a POAP is clearly identified as something that might lead to some type of incentive after collecting. And so, these are the types of things that we're really focused on working with brands right now, because it's that kind of strongest way that you can really start to capture that attention of people, which is often really difficult to do.
But I think this kind of ties into like how POAP works in general, right? Like you get a POAP to maybe, of course, like to get it as a memory of an experience that you've lived, but at the same time, probably you would be able to get something or to participate into a contest or to be eligible for something else, right? I think like this kind of works for like any type of like issuers, as you call it, or like issuers community.
Yes.
Not just for like enterprise users, right?
Yeah, exactly right. And so like to make that possible, there's kind of like two buckets we look at. We've mentioned a lot about like the engagement solutions and how you make it more interactive, how you drive utility. So there's incentives behind collecting POAP. The other thing that we're doing for collectors as well is looking at how we give them more flexibility with how they create POAP and what information sits within the POAP. So we're creating some new technology features at the moment, which will allow like customized data and properties to sit on the token, which will be a really exciting unlock, because you start to look at new things which we've tested out, like artist attribution, and being able to connect that to a POAP, so you can see who designed this POAP. You can click on that person's name, and then you can see this curated collection of all of their artwork of the POAPs they've created. So these are some of the examples where we're trying to create some more flexibility in like how you can make the POAP more special, what it unlocks, by giving some flexibility in the data that you put behind it. Yeah.
On this note, what are some other features that you can share with the audience and they should be excited about, like moving forward or like in the near future?
Yeah, so we're also looking at better management of POAP, so a way where multiple people can manage the creation process and the distribution process of a POAP. We know this is really important for communities where perhaps you have a team working on an event or an activation, and you need like different accounts to be able to access that. So I think that's like quite an important one. And then outside of this, we've just recently launched collections, which is quite exciting. It's the ability for users to go in and create their own curated view of all of these POAPs. So I've been using this recently for things like NFT Paris, where I've been able to share a landing page that shows all of the possible POAPs people could have collected at the event. And so this is quite nice because, people love collecting POAPs, and they're always asking me when you go to events, what have I missed? Where else are there POAPs? Am I going to that party as well? And so this is a nice way where we can start to share and play on those elements where people really want to understand what moments they miss, what moments they can be a part of, and kind of connect the dots with some visibility there.
Where do you see the future of proof of attendance heading, especially because we're in a bull market, let's say, or the beginning of a bull market, and probably a lot of activations, a lot of like brands will be looking to to grow or activate their communities. A lot of events are going to be happening as well. And how do you envision POAP's role in shaping this future?
Yeah, so we spoke about attention before and how hard it is to get people's attention these days. I think a lot of that is just due to the fact that publishing or creating content has become so commoditized, and with the injection now of AI, it's so possible to create these amazing things that look real and but maybe they're not. And so I think we have a little bit of fatigue now in like being unsure of what is actual reality. And so that's where I think, proof of tokenization is incredibly important, because it's using the blockchain. It's a trusted process we can create to verify what actually is reality, what did happen in the past. And so I think, we're starting to see that, and it's only going to happen more and more where people are really going to care about that. And, we're focusing on that word of mouth marketing to grow that desire for people to use POAP, because we understand if we can make that happen, then hopefully everyone can start to see that they're capturing a little bit more of that reality using our product. And then, those moments in history, of course, can't be edited or changed like they can be today. So, I think that's quite important. And that's the part we'll play, again, linking back to this vision we have about ensuring we're preserving history on chain.
We kind of started this episode with a personal question. How did you get into Web3? I kind of want to finish the conversation on the same note.
Yeah.
And one of the questions that I got from the audience was to ask you about your your Web3 full-time remote work opportunities, your experience, and how long these roles can last. And I think this is a very cool question, because I think like many times, like I'm seeing people like having this kind of roles, especially when it comes to marketing. And then I'm looking at their LinkedIn and they've changed like 5 jobs in the last 2 years, at least. So I think maybe this question comes from from somebody who had a very similar experience like me.
Okay. Yeah, for sure. So look, I think remote working taps into this incredible opportunity to hire people with like more of an untapped pool of talent, right? Because you're opening your scope of people from perhaps a city or a country to the whole world. And so I think that's really interesting in 2 aspects. One, bringing the best talent into your company. 2, the other component is creating diversity within your company. People with different experiences, different cultural backgrounds, which I think is incredibly important. But to the question, it also has its challenges. It creates some challenges with cohesiveness, communication, with people being on different time zones, and how you make people feel like they're culturally connected to the work they're doing when they're not seeing people day to day. So look, I see the pros and the cons. I don't think it's a case of like it will be like this or it will not be forever. I think it's just more the fact that it's maybe 2-3 years since this has really taken off as a way of working, these hybrid remote working models. And when you think about that over the kind of, if you zoom out a little bit and think about that from the perspective of how long we've created workforces as humans, it's so early. So I think we're just like learning how to do this in the right way, and how to make it work for everyone, from a company to managers, to staff, to people looking for roles. So I don't know if I have an answer, but I'm intrigued to see how it goes, and at least in my little circle of what I can impact, try and make it as good as possible.
I think I'm also very curious to see how this remote work experience is going to go in Web3, because I think it's a bit different. Like in theory, I think you should have the same perspectives or like same rules, but I'm seeing it a bit of a different dynamic here. So I'm really looking forward to see more the industry maturing in a way. So.
Yeah. Got it. Yeah, I get what you're saying there. Like it feels like a lot of Web3 companies are remote at the moment, and will
Just
that change?
YOLO.
Yeah, will that change if these companies become bigger and more established? Yeah, perhaps. So yeah, I'm also intrigued as much as you, Alex.
One of the last questions that I have for you, and I'm asking everybody on the that comes on the podcast, is if you can give me an example of a tool that you're using in Web3, or a book, a newsletter, or any kind of resource that you think the audience would be interested in learning about, or like something that has helped you as well.
Oh, yeah. God, where do I start? I mean, I love giving shout outs, and there's so many things, particularly over the last, 6 or 7 months, when I really, buckled down on like trying to find a fit to work in the Web3 space, that have helped me. So I'll maybe just like quickly mention three or four. The first one for me is looking into communities that you can take part in. So before I'd even had any kind of role or worked on any official project in the Web3 space, I was able to tap into communities of people who are working in growth and marketing in the Web3 space. And they were able to really accelerate my learning. So a great example of that, Safary. Justin runs an incredible community and brings people in, I think, twice a year to that group. So that's worth checking out. From a resource perspective, something that I'm noticing people don't know a lot of, but there's a friend of mine, Paul Martin, and he's created something called the Marketing DAO, and he's created these incredible resources of growth, content in Web3, from YouTube videos all the way through to like articles that have written, and just like curated these. He's even created things like best marketing agencies and like a way to like scan through those. So I can share something with you that we can put in the comments or the content after around that, because every time I share it with people, they're like, oh my God, how did I not know about this? So that one's quite cool. And then the last one that I'm using a lot at the moment is Airstack Explore. So I love looking at data. I love pulling insights. Sometimes I can't do much of that these days because there's, so many things we need to do. We just need to keep moving and making decisions and not over, look at numbers. But it is nice to go and use things like Airstack Explore, where you can start to cross-reference different things on chain. So for an example, I share a You've Met Me POAP each month with people. And everyone that has collected that, at the end of the month, I go and like check on Airstack Explore. I can see all the people that have collected it, their wallet address, and if they have like a Lens or a Farcaster profile. And I go and check, am I actually following these people? Because without like real world and then digital identities at the moment being like two different things in many cases, it's really hard to know if this person you've met with and spoken with is actually this person, on Twitter or on Farcaster. So that's a really cool tool that I'm using personally, but also for some insights at POAP.
It actually happened to me at Nifty Paris that there are people that I've connected with and I've spoken to on LinkedIn several times, but I had no idea who they were in real life because they had like a PFP.
Yeah.
And we were like, there's actually this specific person. I felt so ashamed because like there was like some people from our community. We took a photo, and then I asked this guy, I'm like, who are you?
Yeah.
And then the girls were like, look, you don't know this guy. I'm like, how would I supposed to know like his PFP and like the way he looks in real life? Like two totally different people. So I think what you're doing there is something very, very cool. And maybe I should start doing that as well. But before we wrap this up, I want to ask you, Jye, where can people find you?
So one thing I've learned joining Web3 is you need to be everywhere and anywhere, because communities and communication can be fragmented. So to be honest, you can probably find me everywhere. But to narrow that down a little bit, I'm a huge Farcaster fan. I spend a lot of time on there. It's quite funny to see my stats on my phone about the apps you use the most and how that's drastically changed in the past few months. Farcaster is where I'm most active. But yeah, Telegram, LinkedIn, Twitter. I am definitely not a part of the Anon crowd. I have the same handle basically on all of these platforms, which is Sandiford. So yeah, that's where you can find me online. And then from a IRL point of view, I'm based in London. There's plenty of events happening in London this week with ETH Global and a number of hackathons and sessions. And then I'll be in New York in early April for NFT NYC.
Thank you so much for being with me for the last hour. It's been awesome talking to you. And thank you for sharing all this knowledge with us and all these use cases and examples about POAP and not only. And looking forward to meeting you again IRL. Looking forward to be exploring more about how we can engage this community with POAP as well.
Absolutely.
And looking forward to talk about more use cases, especially that now the bull run is starting, and I think a lot of activity is going to be happening on chain.
Yeah, no, thanks for having me on, Alex. And yeah, look forward to meeting more people who are passionate about the space, and particularly on the growth and the marketing side. So yeah, great to chat, and happy to chat with anyone further on the things we've discussed today.
Thank you, Jye, and have a lovely day and speak soon.
Yes. Happy Friday.
Happy Friday.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you so much for listening to our Out of Ordinary podcast. If you enjoyed this episode and you would like to hear more content like this, then open up the podcast app and click on the follow or subscribe button. It takes less than 5 seconds and is the single best thing you can do to support the show and stay up to date to more marketing strategies that are being used in the Web3 space.